Welcome to Om Times TV, a division of Om Times Media and Broadcasting. Welcome to the Perfect Life Awakening Show, hosted by Royce Morales. Royce has been a transformational facilitator, teaching groundbreaking, spiritually based courses for more than 4 decades. She is the author of 3 books about her teachings. Join Royce as she takes you on a journey into how to live your best life and find your true purpose through discovering the origins of subconscious, disempowering notions and releasing them. She talks with experts and inspiring people just like you who learned to trust their intuitive inner wisdom, which led to life-changing shifts. Today, her guests live an empowered existence and are helping change the world to a higher consciousness place based on truth and love. You deserve to awaken to, align with, and embody your true self and live a life filled with love. Transform yourself from triggered to empowered and create your perfect life. Here is your host, Royce Morales.
Welcome to the Perfect Life Awakening Show. I'm laughing because we just had so much technological issues, and it's just perfect in terms of the topic that I'm going to get in today with Wendi Knox. And I think we probably just aged a few years going through that, right? Yes. Anyway, so today, like I said, I'm going to be talking with Wendi Knox. She calls herself an uplifter. And I just love that phrase. It's like lifting up, going to that higher place that we're all trying to go to. And she has a lot to say about aging. She is going to talk her topic is called Breaking Out of the Age Cage, which I think all of us are trying to do in our ageist society that we live in. And just to give you a little background about Wendi, and she'll talk more about this too, in her past, some past life, she was an award-winning creative director at one of the largest ad agencies in Los Angeles, but her soul longed for more. And as I'm sure some of you that are listening know, that when your soul longs for more, excuse me, the universe provides, right? So unexpectedly, she was forced out of her position at the age of 50, which, kind of freaked her out a little bit. She felt completely knocked down. She questioned if she was too old to reinvent herself. But then, and she will tell the story about this, she got an undeniable sign from the universe. And she will talk a lot about what she learned from confronting her old notions about aging. But before Wendi gets into her topic, breaking out of the age cage, I want to say a few things about aging, because it's something that is definitely near and dear to my heart. And I'm sure, like I said, everybody on some level has some kind of issue about aging. And so, we're either going through it gracefully or we're kicking and screaming. And I know that many of you out there might notice that you are kicking and screaming. So I have discovered, and it's such a cliche, but I've discovered that age is just a number. And truly, that's all it is. It's the beliefs that we hold that create our reality about aging, even what happens to our bodies. And I could tell you a lot of stories about that. So there are so many myths about age in terms of, you reach a certain age and you go downhill, and your body's inevitably going to fall apart. Your brain is going to degenerate. Your libido is going to go out the window. You're going to become invisible. I know a lot of people go through that, especially actors. So I think what happens also is that we become the brunt of jokes. And I think that, gosh, have you guys noticed how many jokes they tell about Biden? He had a senior moment and all of that stuff. It's like so ridiculous. But I think that aging is one of the few things that it's still acceptable to make jokes about. And I think that's pretty sad. So, or, the media saying, oh, look how poorly that person aged and all of that stuff. But I think for me, what I've noticed about that is that we make fun of what we're most afraid of. So I think that a lot of us are feeling some fear about aging and we don't even realize it. I think that's the real issue here. I don't think there's anything that's more triggering in life than getting old, which of course, if you go deeper in it, it's about our ultimate demise. So we're terrified of that, whether we admit it or not, whether we have religious beliefs or spiritual beliefs about the soul never dying and all of that. I think there's a part of us that is still terrified about that. So I was thinking about this whole topic and I was thinking, gosh, but then there are people like Betty White. She never let preconceived notions about age do anything to her. They never limited her. She broke through that glass ceiling, and she did it without facelifts and without making a fuss. And she wore her age proudly and definitely with dignity. So, but the other thing I wanted to talk a little bit about is that I think some of those false notions about aging start being fed to us the minute we arrive in bodies. When parents say, oh, you don't understand, you'll understand when you're older, or you only feel that way because you're 16, or, she was 6 years young, or you wait until you get to this age. All of those things that we're fed all of the time. And we watch our parents and our grandparents get elderly, and we anticipate going in that same direction, following in their footsteps. The other thing that we're fed is, oh, it's genetic. We have no power over our genes. So all of those things. So I could go on and on, but I want to give Wendi, sorry, Wendi, I want to give Wendi a chance to talk about her amazing work that she calls the Age Cage. And tell us about your history. Tell us about how you arrived at this, the story about what happened when you lost your job, and all of that fun, interesting stuff about you. So welcome, Wendi Knox.
Thank you. Well, first I want to say that the age cage is breaking out of the age cage is the name of a TEDx talk that I've written. And I was getting ready to find the right stage to do it on. And oddly enough, all the curators of TEDx seem to be techie guys in their 20s. And here I'm talking about agelessness. So I think that's been kind of ironic. So I asked the universe, where am I meant to share this message? I got out of the paradigm of it has to be on a TEDx stage. Where and what doors are opening? And there was my dear friend and former spiritual teacher and mentor and beloved Royce asking me to speak. So I'm going to be sharing in a more conversational way bits of that talk. So, because I think it best sums it up. So, okay, I just want to get that clear up front. So, anyway, so in answer to your questions, I grew up, like probably many of you, in an era when the prevailing belief was a lady never tells her age. So brace yourself. I am about to do something very unladylike. I am 68. There. Said it out loud.
Proud of you.
Now, decades past the 50s when I was born, it's still not exactly comfortable to age out loud in our society. Because let's face it, aging women in particular have gotten a pretty bad rap in our culture. In our fairy tales, there are the scary old witches who live in the forest gobbling up young children. In the films I grew up with, and you probably did too, they were the lonely old maids, the crazy old cat ladies, and the poor old beggar women selling apples on the corner. But then there was my beautiful Russian grandmother, Anya, who mysteriously got younger every year. Our family thought it was funny how she lied about her age. But was it? I learned that aging is something to be ashamed of, that it's a disability instead of a gift. And nowhere was this more evident than in my chosen field, the youth-obsessed, male-dominated world of advertising. As a young copywriter, kind of like Peggy in Mad Men, I was shocked to hear a bunch of guys I worked with talking about this amazing, brilliant female art director who I revered as a hack. Why did they call her a hack? Because she was 50. I mean, this woman had won every creative award there was to win. And was there suddenly some expiration date on her talent? I just didn't get it. But soon I would, because as my 50th birthday approached at the ad agency, my well-meaning male partner said, "You're not going to tell anyone, are you?" I thought that was ridiculous. So I did. And guess what? A few months after I turned 50, that ad agency that billed itself as my family for 12 years laid me off without warning. Coincidence? I don't think so. They said it was cutbacks, but it felt a whole lot like ageism and sexism. And whatever it was, I was devastated. I had spent 25 years zipping up parts of my true self to climb the corporate ladder and become the only female senior vice president, creative director at one of the largest ad agencies in Los Angeles, creating and supervising award-winning ad campaigns for brands like Honda and Acura. I was kind of like Don Draper in Mad Men, but without the cigarettes or the martinis. But
Wendy, can I interrupt you for a second?
Sure.
Having read your book, do you happen to have a copy of that nearby that you can show that picture of the zip? I love that that painting.
Well,
that
shoot.
you don't have it. It's okay. It's okay.
I have it somewhere, but I don't know where.
No worries.
But I can show you. I have to hold it up. I have it here. It's
there you go.
Is that
yeah,
showing?
There it is.
That is a painting that I did when I was sitting in these meetings, and actually my boss told me that the head of Honda, when he got married, it was to the equivalent of a geisha girl, and that's the kind of woman that they liked, and I should let my male partner do the talking. So I did this painting. Here it is again. Can you see it? Yeah.
Move it a little bit.
This way? Oh, this way.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
There.
Zipper.
That's me. It had a real zipper on it. And that's how I felt, just like, are you kidding me? So, yeah. Anyway, so yeah, I had to zip up a lot of myself to do that job. And I was not treated like Don Draper, let me tell you. Unlike him, I was an older woman in a young man's industry, feeling the financial pressure of a child, parents with health and money problems, and a husband who was an entrepreneur, which I don't know if you know that, Royce, but that's French for no health plan. So I spent a lot of time sobbing in my backyard, struggling to figure out how I was going to pay bills, who I was without that position, and what I was going to do next. And one day, while sobbing in my backyard, I said a prayer to the universe, and I just kind of spoke out to the flowers, the trees, anyone who was listening. And I said, am I too old to reinvent myself? Please give me a sign. Mm. And I went for a walk in our neighborhood. And when I came home, I had a sign, but I had no idea of what it meant. I'd never seen anything like it. There were hundreds of red dragonflies flying over our outdoor umbrella, whirling and swirling like a dragonfly ballet. And I'd never seen a red dragonfly. I didn't know that they flew in mass, and I couldn't figure out what they were doing there. And they stayed for 4 hours the first day and came back for 3 more days. And
that's crazy.
It was crazy. And honestly, I thought maybe I was crazy. I had my next door neighbor, who was a lawyer at the time and more sane than me, come over and I go, Julie, are you seeing what I'm seeing? Because it was so nuts. And I started doing what anybody would do at this point, and I started Googling dragonflies, and I had no idea, but dragonflies spend most of their lives crawling at the bottom of a pond down in the muck. And they just look like creepy, crawly brown insects, just eating and crawling. And one day, after like 4 years, they crawl out of the pond onto a leaf or a rock or a reed. And in the light, their wings unfurl and they take off. So I thought, wow, dragonflies don't even fly until later in life. Who knew that? And then it hit me. That must be why the dragonflies were coming. I asked for a sign, and they came to tell me that you're a dragonfly and you're getting your wings later in life. And
I love that story.
It was so amazing. And you'd think that would be enough, but no.
No.
Dragonflies everywhere. On the 405 freeway, on the 101 freeway, on the 10 freeway, on Sunset Boulevard, on Hollywood Boulevard. One day I was walking to the dentist in Beverly Hills, and there was this big fat red dragonfly right in front of me. I mean, where was it going? Shopping on Rodeo Drive?
Probably, yes.
So nuts. And sort of the dragonfly coup de grace was my husband Will and I were up in Ojai before we moved here, and we were at the resort, and we were walking across the grass to go get some lunch. And there, under this big oak tree, was another swarm of red dragonflies. And I thought, okay, this is crazy. And I know it sounds nuts, but I told my husband, I think those dragonflies were after me and they're trying to recruit me. I think they know I'm a branding expert and a writer, and they want me to get their Muck to Magic story out into the world to help others change their stories. And that's pretty much what I'm doing now. But I had to first change my own story because I found myself stuck in what I call the age cage, imprisoned by negative stereotypes, stories, and beliefs like what you were talking about aging that exists in our society.
Yeah.
And more importantly, in our heads. We've internalized those lies. Yeah. All that yakking about what you should do, should be, should accomplish by a certain age. And all those voices in our head, the you're too old, it's too late, you're too wrinkled, too blah, 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 not enough this. It's like what women go through in our society, totally amplified as we get older. And as if that's not enough, then we're bombarded by all those perfect retouched faces everywhere we look and the anti-aging products that just have no end. And I started wondering, why is it that aging men in our culture are called distinguished while aging women are so often diminished? And, you know, I don't know if you've heard this adage. It just made me want to puke when I heard it. Men age like fine wine and women like milk.
Oh, so, that's awful.
It is. Again, the expiration date, you know, and it wasn't always like this. There was a time when I'm sure we were friends, Royce, thousands of years ago, when the goddess was worshipped and older women were revered. They were the leaders of the tribe, the wise women, the high priestesses, the medicine women. But then, with the rise of the patriarchy, a lie was fabricated that if a woman isn't young, nubile, and of childbearing age, she's worthless. And that lie continues to live in our youth worshiping culture.
Doesn't the word crone, I question the word crone, isn't that a positive word that we've turned
into? If you look it up in the dictionary, it's crone is a skinny, ugly old woman. And yet that word is, oddly enough, derived from the word crown.
Oh, wow.
And the word hag, which is an ugly old woman without the skinny part, comes from the word hagio in Greek, which means holy.
Wow.
Wow. So we are meant to be holy queens, I believe, as we age. But in our culture, we're made to feel, like you said, invisible and worthless. And I believe, as if all this isn't bad enough, you know, as a society and individuals, we've internalized those lies, all those negative connotations and stereotypes and voices in our heads. And our, what I call inner ageism, makes us feel worthless, invisible, and irrelevant. So we often, even though we think it's crazy, we often try to hide our age instead of honoring it. Yeah. And I mean, I have a lot of girlfriends who are amazing, accomplished women, and they don't tell anybody their age. I think our culture's fear of aging is so acute. You know, teenage girls are already getting Botox. And no matter what age we're at, I believe, and I'm sure you agree, that the most powerful anti-aging, or rather pro-aging product any of us have is our minds.
Definitely. Yes.
If we want to be seen and valued in the outside world, we need to retrain our brains to see and value ourselves. And coming from my advertising background, I'd say it's time we rebrand aging. In marketing, we often take a product's perceived weakness and reframe it as a strength. So when I worked on this vehicle, it's called the Honda Odyssey. The researchers told us that typical minivan buyers didn't want it because it was too small. So we remarketed the Odyssey to atypical minivan buyers and who didn't want a big vehicle and sort of the big luggy image that came with it. So we called it the minivan for people who wouldn't be caught dead in a minivan. So what if we reframed aging and focused on the positive parts, like more happiness, for instance? I don't know if you knew this, but according to research, 80-year-olds are generally happier than 30-year-olds. But nobody talks about that. Or the other benefits, like gaining more perspective, clear priorities, and more freedom to unzip your true self. So if I were writing a tagline, it might be aging. Let's stop telling the same old story. Let's reframe the aging process and see ourselves as becoming more of who we are, not less of what we were.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
I'm sorry to interrupt,
No,
but when you said statistically 80-year-olds are happier, in what way? Why do you think that is? What is that about?
I think so many of us spend so much of our lives trying to please others and fit some mold, some preconceived mold, or, especially as mothers, grandmothers, anticipating what everybody needs. And I think by the time you hit 80, you kind of say, F that. It's like, I don't have that much time left, probably. I'm going to start pleasing me.
Yeah.
I find myself even now, like things that I used to think I should do, I go, do I really need to? Who says I should? Does that feel right to me? Does that light me up? Does that speak to my soul? I think these are the questions we start to ask ourselves as we age, So I think that's a big part of it.
Yeah.
Letting go of the mask, the good girl, everybody's friend, all those kinds of things. I think you start changing that as you age. At least I hope so. If you've evolved in this life. Anyway, let's see. Anyway, that thing I was saying about what if we saw ourselves as becoming more of who we are, not less of what we were. And, this isn't some woo-woo idea. Science, there's proof that our beliefs affect our biology. I mean, this is true with people who miraculously defy the odds on some fatal disease. There's concrete evidence that people who have a positive attitude about aging live an average of 7.5 years longer than those who have a negative perception.
Can I insert a story about that I think
absolutely
really kind of adds evidence to that? And it's something that happened. My husband and I got together. He was, I think, 29 at the time, maybe a little bit older. I was an older woman. And shortly after we got together, he shared with me that he thought, and he really believed this, it was, just a strong notion that he had, that he was going to die by the time he was 35. Actually, he said, I'm going to die at the age of 35. And I said, what? Why is that? And he apparently had some kind of a dream or a vision that told him that he was going to die at 35. He just carried that with him all the time. And he was kind of living from that place of, well, I'm not going to be here much longer, blah, blah, blah. And I looked at him and I'm like, well, let's do something about that. Because I've spent my life looking for you and I don't want you to die in 5 years. So we did some inner work. And he discovered that, and this is the work that I do with people, just a little plug here, but we did some inner work, and he discovered a past life where he did die at the age of 35, quite tragically. And he had
Wow.
been carrying that memory with him, and it became such a deep-seated belief that he just figured that's the way it is, and that's the way it's always been. And I'm sure there were other lifetimes that kind of instilled that in him. So we processed through that, and he let it go, and he's now 64. So hooray, he didn't have to manifest that. So I think there's really some truth in the notions that we carry with us, whether it's from this life or past lives, or whatever has been instilled in us that we bought into, that becomes our physical reality. So I'm sorry I cut you off.
Oh no, I completely agree. And in my life, my mother, so beautiful and talented, but she had a lot of depression and a lot of issues. And so I watched her become immobilized at a fairly young age. And, it gave me this notion, this picture that aging meant getting crippled, depressed, all these really dark images.
Yeah.
Like I remember visiting her and she was sitting in the dark, literally. And so I've had to work so hard to reframe that. So I get what you mean. And it takes a lot of effort, because they're not only, those images we get from our parents, it's like drinking mother's milk. It's in there, and then it's everything out there too. So I get it. We each have our own age cage, and it's based on what we see, what we hear, what we absorb, what we carry. I'm sure, like Michael, what we carry from other lifetimes, But what's hopeful is they see that attitude plays a bigger part in longevity than genetics or diet.
Yep.
So we always think, oh, well, my mother was this, and da, da, da. And that is not necessarily the case, like you said. And, I love that we have the opportunity to shift that. So the question I ask in this talk is, how do we break out of the age cage? And I say, become a dragonfly. And what I mean by that is to consciously rise up from the muck of our old limiting stories into the magic of new possibilities. And I have what I call, you can tell I've been in advertising, right? I have dragon flying lessons and but they're just really simple, but I think profound ways of looking like this that can help us break out. So dragon flying lesson number 1 is to turn muck into magic, and kind of like what you did with Michael, which was to question that belief he was carrying.
Yeah.
Is to become really vigilant in listening to yourself and to others. And I hear this all the time. I hear friends say, well, at our age, ... or it's all downhill from here. And I say, is it? Ask yourself when you hear these things, is this true for me? This may be true for them, but is this true for me? And a little story, we moved up, my husband and I moved up to Ojai, which is about an hour and a half from LA, really small, wonderful, creative community. But when we moved up here, people kept saying, oh, so are you retiring in Ojai? And it really irked me. It was like, fingernails on a chalkboard. And I thought, why does that bug me so much? Well, one, that must mean they think I look old enough to be retiring. And that really, once I got past that, I realized I feel like I'm just getting started, And so I had to tell myself when I hear these things, that's their story, not mine. And now my answer when people say that is no, I'm not retiring. I'm refiring. And
That's
And
great.
it's like, these are the little ways that we can transform muck into magic. Stop and ask if this is true, and then create a better story. And it can be simple or it can be complicated. Like when you hear those stories, think to yourself, well, that's true for them. But for me, the best is yet to come. That's going to be my story. That's going to be my theme song as I go through life. So that's dragonflying lesson number 1.
Can I mention something?
Absolutely.
It kind of goes on
I
your
love to be interrupted by you.
Okay.
Don't worry.
Sorry.
I like it. I think
Okay.
this is fun.
I was at the market one day and I was trying to get something at a top shelf, and I'm height challenged, right? And so this young guy came like running up to me and he said, "Can I help you?" And I'm thinking, sure. But afterwards I realized it wasn't because I was height challenged. He probably thought, oh, let me help this older woman. And it was like, oh God, do I appear that way to people? And now it's like, wow, I just like relish that. It's like, sure, come on, help me. You didn't help me 5 years ago, but you're willing to help me now. So that's great. Yeah.
It's all in how we look at it, and it's like, yeah, you could look at it like he was honoring you, or he thought you were pathetic.
Yes.
It's just like everything else. It's our perspective.
Yeah. So, Wendi, we need to take a little bit of a break. So I just want to remind everybody we're listening to Wendi Knox, and she's going to give us some more dragonfly lessons about aging, and we will be right back.
Okay.
Om Times TV. Imagine becoming a super influencer. Reinvent yourself, invest in your brand, and then manifest your success with a robust spheric approach. Om Times Media and Broadcasting offers a unique and multifaceted way to become the spiritual and conscious influencer you deserve to be by putting your message across our powerful platform with its proven record of integrity and excellence. Through our produced shows, Om Times offers the opportunity to become a social media TV personality, a radio show host, an Om Times magazine columnist, and a syndicated podcaster, all in one shot. By live streaming your show on Om Times TV and broadcasting it across the extensive Om Times radio and TV networks, you become more than a host. You become an ambassador and a force for positive change. Om Times. Open yourself to the possibilities.
When I first saw Turtle, my heart was full. Now I'm anything but lonely.
We have this deep connection, this heart connection.
He just wants to be close to you and part of your life.
Every day with Turtle is a perfect day.
When I'm holding her, it makes me feel calmer.
I think everything he does shows how much he loves us.
When we adopt a shelter pet, we discover they're a little bit of a lot of things.
But they're all pure love.
Welcome back. We're talking with Wendi Knox. She is an author. She wrote a wonderful book called From Muck to Magic. It's filled with her beautiful, just whimsical illustrations. And she's talking today about that, breaking out of that age cage. So you were giving us some dragonfly lessons. So go on and continue. Thank you.
Okay. Well, the second dragonflying lesson I say is find what lights you up. So, excuse me, after years in the muck, dragonflies finally make their way to the light where their wings unfurl. So I say, if we want to soar, we need to find what lights us up. So maybe that's a passion, a hobby, a cause, something you love doing as a child or postponed doing as an adult. Like this friend of mine is this amazing artist, but she kept putting that on the back burner, and now in her 60s, she's painting like crazy. Take the time to find what makes you lose track of time. And we don't often ask ourselves these questions. What brings me joy? What gives my heart wings? How can I lift others up? And I think that's where we find the fountain of youth. I don't think it's in a bottle, in the cosmetic department. I think it's in really getting in touch with who we are and what we're meant to express in this world. So that's dragonfly lesson number 2. Number 3 is to find ageless, cageless role models. I believe we all know very young people who seem old and older people who are perennially young. And I like to look for those. I'm like on a mission to find people who own their age and are not defined by it. And
Yeah, like Betty White. Yes. Definitely.
Absolutely. She's a perfect example.
Yeah.
But I think we need examples that aren't in show business. People hold her up and Helen Mirren, but there's a lot of people. One of my ageless, cageless role models was this woman who I met only once over 35 years ago. I was in my 30s. She was in her 70s, sitting across from me at a luncheon. And to this day, I can't think of talking to anyone who was more captivating, curious, or full of life. I really don't remember how many wrinkles she had, but I will never forget the sparkle in her blue eyes.
Mm-hmm.
And another ageless, cageless role model for me, I don't know if you've heard of her, the artist and potter, Beatrice Wood.
Yes.
Beatrice lived in Ojai. She lived to 105 years old and attributed her longevity, you're going to love this, to art books, chocolates, and young men. And said that her most productive years were between 85 and 105. So
wow.
There's hope for all of us.
Yeah.
So dragonfly lesson number 4 is it's never too late. Ever since I was a little girl, my dream was to write and paint things to touch people's hearts. Yeah. And it took quite a while, but at 65, I finally got my first book published and had my first solo art show. And I believe that each of us has our own unique magic to bring into this world, a gift, a calling, a light.
I can hear you. You're muted, right?
Yeah.
What?
Oh, you know what? That's my husband. I'm going to move my computer as we speak to a different place because he's online doing something too.
Okay. I thought I was hearing things.
No, I didn't know if it would be disruptive, but apparently it is. So let me move out of here. Here we go.
I'm glad this is happening to you and not me.
It's been one of those technological days. Here we go.
I know.
Is that better?
Yeah, I don't hear it now.
Great.
Okay. This was going to be my big finish, Royce.
Sorry.
Okay. Anyway, so I was saying that I believe that each of us has our own unique magic, a gift, a calling, a light to shine in a world that has never seen it more. And I believe part of my mission is to remind us all that it's never too late. It's never too late to dare, to dream, to create, to change, to have a show, to express, to explore, to reinvent, to reconnect, to take a chance, to take a stand, to take a class, to take a leap. It's never too late to grow our wings and soar.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. So a couple of questions are coming to mind as you're talking. Yeah. I was thinking about this as I was, putting my makeup on this morning and trying to look good and all of that stuff that, that we've been trained to do. So how does that fit with the age cage? Is it possible to do that just because you want to present your best self, or is there still part of us that needs to do that so that nobody knows how old we are? What are your thoughts about that?
Well, I'm pretty big on balance. Like, when I went through years of infertility, I did Eastern medicine and Western medicine. And I kind of feel the same way about this. I think even as an artist or someone who loves beauty in life, I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with wanting to look our best.
Yeah.
But if it comes from this desperate place where I want to like hide everything on my face and, I'm going to go crazy because I have some lines here, which I have from time to time, I think it's finding a balance.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ironically, I have been thinking about this a lot because, I really think people need to do what they need to do. So if somebody wants to and can afford a facelift and that makes them feel better, mazel tov, have it. For me, that doesn't feel right, but I'm open to doing some more natural things, but ironically, I went to get some microderm, which is sort of like a current that's supposed to help make things look better. And I had this horrible reaction to it. And the lines that bugged me under my eyes got like 10 times worse. And I just thought, okay, I think that's God's way of telling me, let that shit go. So I think it's different for everybody. I feel the really important thing is our intention. Am I doing this because I feel so bad about myself and I don't want to be seen the way I am? Or am I doing this because I want to make the most of who I am and present my best self? I just comes from a different place.
Yes.
That's
So the intention, I think what you said is, that's all it is. So if my intention is that this color looks better on TV and it looks more flattering to me versus, oh my gosh,
right.
What if they see this wrinkle here? I think that's the difference. Yeah. Yeah. And when you were talking about your mom, I just have to tell you a funny story about my mom. My mother, Ms. Vanity of the Century, was 86, and she had worn glasses most of her life. That was not a problem for her. But when her hearing started to go, I used to say, Mom, what's the big deal? Just get some hearing aids. What? And she's like, no, I can't do that. I don't want people to think that I'm old. And I'm like, what? It just cracked me up.
It's such a prevalent thing though in our society.
Yes.
It's ingrained in us. And I remember that AARP did this program where they had younger people paired up with older people, and it was what you could learn from each other. And when the young people got to know the older people, it changed their stereotype of what 80 is, or what, like an 85-year-old man taught a 20-year-old girl how to do the tango or things like that, and I think we each can be an ambassador for defying those rules of society and those things. And I'm like you, it really bugs me what they do with Biden. I mean, there's young people that make gaffes. There's younger people that forget things, I mean, it's just like, it's so cruel, and it feeds this really negative view about age when, let's face it, we're aging from the moment we come out of our mother's wombs. Like, why do we make that a bad thing?
Exactly. So what about the notion that a couple of things that I'm thinking as you're talking, that spiritually, there is no age to our spirit. They talk in various spiritual disciplines, they talk about a young soul and an old soul, but on a spiritual, energetic level, we have no age. So what do you have to say about that?
I'm working on it. That's what I have to say about that. I tell myself that, It's interesting. I'm having some issues with my knee, like a torn meniscus. And I go, oh my God, I'm going to turn into my mom. And she had all these problems with her knees and she couldn't walk. And I have to like stop myself and go, 20-year-olds have problems with their knees. Like, why do I go into that whole story? And it's like my spirit feels so young and full of possibilities. And I feel like I'm learning every day and I'm discovering new gifts and things I want to share with the world. But that voice inside my head, which, you know, I think I've told you this, I call her Edna, the bitch that lives in my head, my inner critic, has this whole other story going. And I think like everything with age, and it's like, what voice are we going to listen to? Are we going to listen to the scary old voice of fear and the what's been handed down in the culture? Or are we going to listen to our hearts? And I feel like when we tune into the voice of our hearts and we get quiet and connect with the part of us that really is ageless and formless, you know, we're so much kinder and we have more energy and we focus in on what's important. But it's a practice. It's really asking, where did that come from? Is that true for me? How can I change it? You know, for me, when that starts, I mean, it really, you know, I think the internet and seeing all the retouched faces everywhere and people being able to affect how they look and, you know, just, oh, they've accomplished this at this age. And that, I mean, it's so easy to go into comparison and self-judgment. I think it's something we have to be vigilant about, just like drinking enough water, which I don't always do, but
yeah. And what about the notion of, you know, since I'm a spiritual teacher, I talk a lot about the fact that everything in our life on some level is chosen. So we even chose our expiration date, shall we say, or there's part of us that knows when we're complete here, when we're done, and it's time to move on. What about that notion?
Well, I don't know. I feel I haven't really looked at it through that lens. I mean, I've looked at it like, wow, those dragonflies came to me. I lost my job at 50. I feel like in some way I've chosen to be a spokesperson for this cause, this changing our minds about age and, you know, seeing ourselves, especially women, helping women connect with their divine feminine and our eternal selves, and seeing ourselves as beyond a number, like you started in the very beginning.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
I advocate the fact that we might have chosen it on a spiritual level, but that doesn't mean that it's permanent.
Right. You
Just
can
like my
change
husband, the story of my husband who, you know, thought he was going to die at 35 and he changed that story. So I don't think there's anything that, you know, I think what we choose is kind of like a blueprint, you know, and we can make additions and, you know, learn certain things and change that blueprint and clean things up and have things shift. And, you know, so on that level,
we can write new stories as we go along. You know, it's like nothing is set in stone. I think that's true. And I'm really, I don't know if you've read this book. It's called The Surrender Experiment. Do you know, have you heard of the author? I think his name is Michael Singer. He wrote An Untethered Soul. Anyway, this book, The Surrender Experiment, is so interesting. It covers 40 years of this guy. And he decided that he was going to live his life not according to his own preferences, his preconceived ideas of what was good or what was bad. So he built some property and somebody wanted to move onto the property, a friend, and he didn't really want that, but he said yes. And then he kept saying yes to things that made him uncomfortable. And eventually he ended up creating this whole spiritual community. And he got some college friends to build a structure on his property. It was supposed to be a meditation room. It ended up being a temple. And then people asked him to build structures for them. He ended up with this building company. I mean, his whole life was walking through these doors that he never imagined. And he ended up like this billionaire, making this huge difference in people's lives. And I've been trying in these later years to adapt more of that attitude. Like I said, I wrote this talk thinking it was going to be a TED talk. Well, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But the important thing is, in my heart, I knew I was meant to share this message. And what doors are opening for that? And I feel like that kind of attitude keeps us young, because we don't have preconceived at 40 or something.
I just want you guys to know that you are sharing your screen. So Professor Athens.
Oh, you froze for a second there.
Okay.
And I'm hearing something else.
Yeah, that's Michael. I'm so sorry.
Oh, okay.
Michael, can you stop talking for about 2 minutes? I'm almost done here.
When it happens, I start thinking it's the voice from the great beyond.
I'm sorry. Yeah, we've got a couple more minutes, so he can be silent for a couple more minutes. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Anyway, I guess I just feel like every day we have opportunities to challenge those ageist thoughts and stereotypes and beliefs that are all around us, and it takes vigilance.
Yeah.
Are you wanting to
So
show us?
just to kind of complete things, tell us how to get in contact with you. Tell us where do we get your book? You know, give a little plug, be the ad agency.
Shameless self-promotion.
Shameless self-promotion, Ms. Ad Agency.
Okay, so my website is wendyknox.com, but because
With
I had to be different growing up, it's Wendi with an I. Wendi Knox, Knox.com. And that is where you can find my book. My book, From Muck to Magic, was channeled through me. I asked the universe, how can I share my story about the dragonflies in a way that'll touch people? And it became, the words and the paintings just came through me. And I like to think of it as being written for your inner child. It's a book that bypasses the brain and goes to the heart, from Muck to Magic. If you go on my website and click on the link, it'll take you to Amazon or my publisher, where you get free shipping either way.
Yes.
And also, I write a blog. If you sign up for my newsletter, I like to write things that uplift and inspire people.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We've learned so much today. And just to remind everybody, wendyknox.com with an I, and just also to remind everyone to celebrate another 365 days of being in this body. Choose to follow Betty White's amazing example by not fitting into an age-defined role. Wear whatever you want. Put on makeup if you feel like it. Celebrate
be a dragonfly.
Age is just a number. Be a dragonfly. And age is actually just a belief. So, and remember, no matter what age you are, the most powerful anti-aging, as Wendi said, or pro-aging product that any of us have is our minds. So thank you so much again for joining us. And I will see you in a couple weeks.
Thank you, Royce.
Thank you.